All right, everybody, welcome back. Good afternoon now. And since we've gone over all the numbers with Byron Murphy, the next step is to go over the player himself. What does he bring to the table? What does he do? What makes him stand out? What makes him worthy of being selected 16th overall in the draft? Basically, what is this guy going to do for us? We know what he did for Texas, but now what is he going to do for us? That's more important to us by a long shot. So, let's go through some of the things that I noted when I watched him play. Let's talk about some of the things that I looked at several scouting reports from Byron Murphy II. It seems like there's a pretty strong consensus when it comes to what he's good at and what he's not good at. Like pretty much every scouting report had the same basic rundown in my estimation. So he's not a player that was really hard to figure out for people, it feels like. So the pros with him, some of the things that he's bringing to the table in the positive. And some of this stuff is going to be reiterated from the pre-draft videos I did, but that's okay. We're going to go over new stuff as well. So the thing that really stands out is how explosive he is. Should be very dangerous on the interior. The explosive qualities that he brings are things that a lot of interior offensive linemen are not used to. They tend to be more used to playing against bigger, slower, less explosive guys. And you can see his ability to disrupt in the middle, which is something that a lot of players who play in the middle just do not have. So that's the thing that really stands out to him. His quickness off the line of scrimmage, his first step quickness really stands out. He's consistently, you watch his games, he consistently gets the edge on guards. He consistently makes these little moves to the left or right at the snap, and the guard that or center that is blocking him cannot keep up. He just kind of gets the corner, which is interesting, right? Because it's one thing when you're an edge rusher and you're trying to get the edge because you've got all that space out there to work with and you're coming from the outside, but Murphy is more like he'll just kind of shoot through the gap and it looks like he's getting the edge even though there's no real edge to get because he is so quick through the line. That gap shooting ability is really special, and that's the thing that jumps out to you. He's constantly disrupting the play right at the start by rocketing off the line of scrimmage. His effort is not something that I question. I'll talk about this more later, but there's one play that I saw against, I want to say Kansas State, where he's making a tackle on Ben Sinote like 20-25 yards down the field. I see a lot of plays where he's getting things done on second effort or third effort. So there's no questioning his competitive drive. There's no questioning his effort on pretty much every snap he plays, which is something that you can't necessarily say for his teammate on that defensive line. There was a lot made about whether T'Vondre Sweat was really into this during the pre-draft process. Byron Murphy's definitely into this. So his burst is really good for gap shooting. I saw several plays just from a few games that I looked at where he's getting into the gap before the offensive lineman is out of his stance, where he's just able to immediately blow up the play because he worms himself into that gap and he immediately gets leverage over the offensive lineman because he's just working behind the eight ball because Murphy's already rocketing into the backfield and the lineman's just trying to get up and get in front of him, but you're not going to get in front of this guy. He's too quick. You're not going to be able to shuffle in front of him when you're already starting from a disadvantage like a lot of guys are because of his gap shooting ability. So that's the thing that really strikes you, I think, about Murphy. His ability to shoot the gap and use his first step quickness to immediately make the play uncomfortable for the offense. But he's also got legitimate strength. He's not a very big guy, but he's very muscly and he's got sturdy legs, so he can push linemen around. There were plenty of plays that I saw out there where he's just driving a guy back into the pocket. Now, they're college offensive linemen who may not even make the NFL. It's going to be different in the NFL. I know that. But there is definitely a bull rush ability in his arsenal. He's got good leg drive to just push guys into the pocket. I'm not going to pretend like that's going to work on every single play in the NFL the way that it sometimes looked like it did in college, but he does have leg drive. And he's got pass rush moves. He can win on technique. One thing that I noticed him do quite a bit is when he lines up on the outside, which again happened very rarely in college, but I did notice it a few times last year. It felt like it happened once a game or so. He would line up almost as an edge rusher or maybe a five eye, or excuse me, a five tech, and he would just immediately get the inside on the tackle and just push his way to the quarterback to get pressure. So it's not just a guy who wins on speed. It's not just a guy who wins on strength. He's got the ability to mislead the offensive lineman, misdirect him, act like he's going one way and then go the other way. I saw some reps where he's able to use his hands to shed the blocker and then get over to where he wants to go. So he's got legitimate moves. This is not a situation where he's got no refinement. He's got nothing but physical talent. And in the NFL, that physical talent's going to count for less, so he's not going to be very good. No, this guy is going to be able to translate because of his skills with his hands. Like I said earlier, he's short, which is often good because when you're short, you are the low man. You don't have to sink your hips and bend your knees to get low. So you're going to win leverage battles because you're able to get up into the pads of the taller offensive lineman. And that's going to be an advantage in many situations for Murphy. So that's an area where height is actually a disadvantage. If Byron Murphy's going up against a guard that is like 6'4", 6'5", and he's 6 foot, not even 6'1", he's going to be able to generate some real wins just based off the leverage. There's also plenty of plays of him being able to chase the ball down from the backside because he's fast and athletic. He's got lateral quickness. He's got the ability to have a play where the offense is running away from him and he's still able to get into the play and maybe even make the tackle, make the play, or at the very least disrupt it because he's fast enough to chase it down and he's got the hustle and the effort and the competitiveness to chase it down when the opportunity's there. So I like what I see in that regard. And I kind of mentioned this earlier, but he's got good hands. You can see him counter opposing linemen in hand battles. Sometimes there were definitely some reps I saw where he was able to just use his hands to quickly shuffle a guy out of the way and move on to the next guy or go make a play on the ball. And he is a smaller guy, but there was a reason why Texas played him at nose tackle a good amount, even though they had a 365-pound dude next to him, because he's not bad at taking on double teams. I don't think that it's necessarily a big strength of his, but he can take on a double team and push his way through. He can take on a double team and kind of shoot the gap between the two of them. And he had to learn how to deal with double teams because teams last year double teamed him a lot. I'll talk more about that later, but double teaming was definitely a thing that teams threw at him to try to mitigate his impact. And he learned how to play through it. And I don't think he does badly against it at all. Now, in the NFL, it's a different monster, but I did not hate what I saw from him in that regard. I don't know if I want him playing nose tackle in the NFL that much, but he did it okay at the college level, and he's not going to be one of these undersized interior defensive linemen that just gets bullied all the time. Definitely not. Didn't miss any time to injuries in his 3-year college career. Played every game that he could have, as near as I can tell anyway. Had at least snaps. There were some games where he didn't record stats, but he had snaps. And since he'll be 21 during his first ever preseason and training camp and rookie minicamp, there's every reason to believe he's going to get better in the coming few years. When you're that young, when you start out in the NFL, you should expect to get better. Now, for some of the things with him that I didn't love, some of the cons, some of the issues, he is undersized. And while I do think he takes on double teams fairly well, it's still going to be difficult for him to hold his ground against double teams. And in the NFL, especially, you're going to get double teamed by much better linemen. So if you're looking at him to be somebody who holds up against a double team all the time and just makes life super easy for everybody behind him, that's probably not going to be his game. He's going to be more of a gap shooter than he is a guy who just eats up space, which obviously that's what we want. We didn't spend the 16th overall pick on a space eater. But when he gets double teamed, I'm not sure it's going to go great for him the way that it sometimes went fairly well in college. if you read the scouting reports on him, and I can understand why they say this if you watch him play, almost all of them say this guy should play in a 4-3 as a 3-tech. And we're running a 3-4. Now, the good news here, I want to say that I'm not worried about this because McDonald's defense has already produced a stud in Madubuike last year who plays somewhat similarly to Byron Murphy. So Mike McDonald's particular defense seems like it's pretty good for this. So I don't think Byron Murphy Byron Murphy II will have any issue fitting into McDonald's defense because of what we saw last year with Madubuike. But in a vacuum, this is not exactly an ideal 3-4 player. So down the line, if our defense has changed, maybe we have a new head coach, maybe we have a new defensive coordinator, and it's a little more of a traditional 3-4 where the ends are not really supposed to be gap shooters and playmakers, I don't think he'll be an ideal fit for that. That won't matter for a while because McDonald's going to be here for a minute, but down the line it could if the defense changes, and I think it's good to be aware of that. He's not really going to be able to add weight because he's short. He's already probably pretty well capped out. I think that if he tried to add weight, it would probably be bad weight. So he doesn't have the frame to add weight if he finds out in the NFL, oh, I need to add another 15 pounds. Not going to be so easy when you're only 6 feet tall, basically. So I'm a little bit aware of that. But that will only matter if in the NFL he finds that he's just not cutting it. His stack and shed game looks good in theory in college, but he does have shorter arms, so I don't know how well that's going to translate in the NFL. A lot of players struggle to stack and shed blockers when they are outmatched in terms of arm length, and most offensive linemen that Murphy goes up against are going to have longer arms than him. So that could be a little bit of a problem when compared to the way he played in college. And he also doesn't finish plays the way you would like. He misses a lot of tackles. We went over that earlier. His missed tackle rate is pretty dang high. And it's a combination of a couple different things. One, I think that he just kind of has short arms. It's harder to tackle when you have short arms because you can't wrap up. And also he does some ankle diving where he just puts himself in a situation where he can easily miss a tackle because he dives, the guy makes a move, and he's already committed. He already dove. So it's kind of like a Jadeveon Clowney thing, where Clowney was really good at disrupting, Clowney was really good at generating pressure, Clowney was really good at getting to the ball. He was not great at finishing the play, which is why he had a great year for the Seahawks 2019, but he only had, I think, 3.5 sacks that year because he was not a good finisher. And Murphy may end up being kind of like that. Murphy may get better in these areas too. And I do wonder if he'll be able to get past that and he'll just end up being like another Clowney-like player. I remember Marcus Davenport used to be kind of like that for the Saints. And his production in college was forgettable. He had 8.5 sacks across 3 years. If you just look at the stat sheet, you're not going to be terribly excited by that. Now, I think it's very important to go beyond the stat sheet. And also, he did play a very limited number of snaps. Texas did a really good job of keeping him to playing 30 snaps a game on average, even in his final year. And there were some games where he played over 40, but there is probably going to be a little bit of a build-up period to where he's able to actually play. I mean, what do you expect from Byron Murphy? Do you expect him to play 45 snaps a game? You'd prefer that he not, but last year, we all saw how much we used our defensive linemen. Leonard Williams playing 60 snaps a game sometimes. So hopefully we can avoid that, but sometimes it's hard to avoid because people get hurt and you need to lean on your studs in crucial moments. So that is the list of pros and cons that I had on Byron Murphy as a player. Obviously, there's way more to like than to dislike. Most of these cons don't even really matter that much. But what I would say is this, and I've said this a couple times already, I really want to caution people against thinking this is going to be Aaron Donald or Jalen Carter or Cortez Kennedy or players like that. This is not that. I don't see that here. And if you're expecting that from this guy, you're probably going to end up disappointed and you're probably going to end up resenting him for bad reasons. So The reality is this is a very good player, will probably peak as a multiple Pro Bowler. I don't know if he's going to ascend beyond that. See you guys later. Go Hawks.